So the STARR format. So all of these techniques and stuff that I learned from this book, which is amazing and it's so useful. I would really, really recommend it. It's Medical Interviews, a comprehensive guide to CT, ST, and registrar interviews. But these techniques are useful for any type of interview at any stage, including medical school, really. But the type of things that they ask, so like examples from when you were on placement or when you were working, will be more relevant, obviously, if you've been through medical school or you've worked for a while. So I thought we'd start off by talking about what the STARR format is. So basically, S stands for situation, T stands for task, A stands for action, R is result, and then the other R is reflection. So you might find it written as just STAR in some places, but in this book what they've done is add the extra R on to remind you to think about what you've learned from this experience and then convey that to the examiner. So that's very basic on what the STARR format is. So now let's think about how we can apply it. So usually the STARR format is a great system for talking about examples. So if they ask you for an example of a time when you showed teamwork, a time when you showed leadership, or those sorts of generic things, then it's great. But it's also really good for very specific examples or like anecdotes. So a time that you made a mistake, a time that you impacted patient safety, an example where you handled stress well. So there are so many different things that they could ask, and they're all really well detailed in this book. So I would really, really recommend again that you get it. But I just thought we'd talk through some examples so that you can get a little bit of an idea as to what sorts of things you could include. So if we talk through making a mistake, so I'll tell you a little bit about a time that I made a mistake. So the situation, I was doing my critical care module in final year and we were doing a simulation. So I was tasked with inserting a cannula into the dummy. Whilst I was opening the cannula, I sustained a needle stick injury. The result of that was that I instantly felt very embarrassed. I had to leave the simulation in order to compose myself and then come back to the scenario and help out. So reflecting back on this, I was thinking about how I could avoid this in the future. And of course, this was a simulation, so there were no specific consequences in terms of having to go to occupational health and catching a bloodborne virus. However, it did teach me that in balancing my situational awareness with my task-focusedness, I maybe hadn't got that balance quite so right, and I need to work on improving that skill. Afterwards, speaking to my colleagues about their experiences helped me. So if I do sustain a needle stick injury in the future, I know a bit more about the protocol I need to follow. I know that I can rely on my colleagues to discuss my experience with, and I've gained some action points from this experience to hopefully help me in future simulations and real life experiences. So that was a breakdown of how you can go through the STARR format when you're discussing an example. So just thought we'd talk through another one as well, just so you've got one more example to kind of understand the whole format and get it down. So if asked to give an example about a time that you showed patient empathy. So the situation was I was in my third year on my surgical placement and I was attending breast theatre for that morning. There was a very anxious patient that had come in for her surgery that morning and I was observing her anaesthetic and in the pre-op room with her. As a medical student, I was able to give her time, I was able to hold her hand, stay in recovery with her, and really just be there with her throughout this process. And therefore in recovery, she communicated to me that she felt a lot less anxious by my presence, and she was really grateful for the fact that I gave her that time. And so on reflection, as a medical student, I feel that I was in a prime position to be able to give that time to her, which potentially the surgeons or the other people who were involved in her care weren't able to do because they had to do other parts of their job. And so in the future, whenever I have the opportunity, I would like to do this more, as I know that it can have a great impact on the patient's care. So I hope that was a useful breakdown, just very quick example of how you can use the STARR format for interview prep. Again, like I said, get the book, it is great. And I'll link you to some AFP resources as well that I've created, along with a long list of interview questions that should hopefully be useful for your preparation.